This is going to be a little bit different from what I usually do, but these patch notes for version 3.1.0, legitimately, best patch notes I've ever seen for 3. This is amazing. Splatoon 3 is in the best state it's ever been in. But hey, before we get into this review of version 3.1.0 patch notes, I'd just like to mention that during this recording, I was feeling a little bit under the weather, so my voice sounds really croaky and really bad. My apologies. I hope that if I do this sort of thing in the future, I won't be as under the weather and I'll sound just a little bit more upbeat. But anyway, let's get right in to the patch notes. I mean, the first major change is Splatfest points. I mean, it's... I can't really comment on this. I don't know what the Splatfest points, what the system behind it really is. So, interesting change, but I have no idea. What I can comment on is the weapon changes. Splatshot Nova got an improvement to strafe speed and paint at the user's feet, which is really good for movement. This is basically just a major movement buff for Splatshot Nova, which is really, really nice. Nova was already quite a mobile weapon, but obviously it's not really been particularly meta, so it's nice to see it get even more buffs. Luna Blast and Luna Blast and Neo both got an increase to the explosion area that deals 70 damage by about 50%, which is nice. It's not a direct increase to blast radius, but it just means that you're consistently going to deal higher damage if you're caught within the blast radius. For the Big Twig, the damage fall-off rate has been adjusted to be more gradual when doing vertical swings, which is nice. It means you can do higher damage from a further distance, which is much appreciated on Big Swig because it has just abysmal damage. The Sniper max damage increased from 60 to 68. This, for the Sniper, I think is huge. It may look like a bit of a small change, but when you consider how many things in this game do between 32 and 40 damage, it just shows how well this weapon's going to be able to combo now with something like Angle Shooter or an indirect burst bomb or a shot from the Splat Shot. This is a really deserved change, honestly. Slosher and Slosher Deco, the damage fall off from attacking someone vertically lower has been decreased, and the minimum amount of damage is now 50, which means Slosher will always two-shot, no matter the distance, the vertical distance between the two players, which is really nice, because having Slosher 3-shot is one of the most frustrating things. Mini and Zimmy got increased firing duration by roughly 17%, which is also really nice. Because something with Zimmy is that you've got a very, very, very short firing time, and being able to utilize that is quite difficult. So having an extra 17% duration is definitely a deserved buff, and maybe we'll see a bit more play in high ranks, which would be nice, because I love the weapon. Dapple Doolies and Dapple Doolies Nouveau. They've shortened the amount of time it takes for a player to be able to act after a dodge roll by roughly 0.06 seconds, which, if I'm correct, is 2 frames, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Dapple Doolies are really fast. So that's quite a nice buff. It also allows them to compete with Tetras a little bit more, which would be fun. Splat Dooley's got a similar buff. They increase the dodge roll movement speed, shortening the amount of time it takes to move by roughly 0.06 seconds, which is a nice buff. Honestly, Splat Dooley's being able to roll a little bit faster is much appreciated. And the Reflux, which is an interesting pick. We haven't seen a Reflux buff in a while. The angle of diffusion is now narrower depending on the amount of charge, making it easier to focus on attacking a single area, which basically I think means that if you fully charge a shot, your 3 shots are going to be closer together, which is nice because it sucks hitting 90 with a Reflux and missing that 3rd shot. Also, movement speed while charging is now 10% faster, so that's a good strafe speed buff that I think will be quite useful. Reflux is very undertuned at the moment, so I think that'll help in seeing it get more use. Moving on to sub weapons, there's only 2 changes this patch, but these are quite major. We have a buff to angle shooter's paint, which is really handy because that means it's going to be able to be used. We got a buff to angle shooter's paint, which is really handy. The radius of the ink splatter when it hits terrain has now been doubled, and any buff to angle shooter is much appreciated, honestly. The sub weapon is not very good, but this will be good for movement, especially. Being able to use it as a tool to paint your feet, similar to like Burst Bomb, is going to be very interesting. Speaking of Burst Bomb got a nerf. The standard ink tank without any ink saver sub will now be decreased by 45% instead of 40% when a Burst Bomb is used. Basically meaning that Burst Bomb is now even less ink efficient, so it puts you in a worse spot if you try and use 2. Which means Burst Bomb spam is probably going to go down, which, yes, finally, thank God, I hate double Burst Bomb. Moving on to special weapons, we've got Ink Vac. They increase the radius of the outer perimeter when vacuuming up ink by roughly 10%. I think that just means there's a bigger vacuum radius, which is interesting. I don't know what that'll particularly do, but fun buff. Tacticooler. Increase the initial setup speed and roughly doubled the horizontal radius of the area where players can drink a beverage. Basically just making the special faster and easier to use for the whole team, which is good, because Tacticooler is an interesting special. The buffs are useful, but sometimes it's not worth it to go out of your way to put down a Tacticooler or to go grab the buffs from a teammate. This will make it easier to do both of those things, which I think is definitely well-deserved buff. Reef Slider got an increase in the damage dealt. Sorry, Reef Slider got an increase in the indirect damage dealt, and also an increase in the radius of which indirect damage can be dealt, and increase the radius of the ink splatter by roughly 21%. All of these are good buffs. It just makes Reef Slider a little bit more useful, a little bit more valuable, since you're more likely to actually catch opponents in the Reef Slider's explosion. Inkjet got an increase in the explosion area that deals 50 damage by roughly 43%, with no changes to the actual radius of the explosion, which is really nice because the radius you can deal 50 in is absolutely minuscule, so I'm glad they buffed that. And the jet of ink that comes out is now strengthened, so pressing B enables players to jump higher than before. I think this is probably due to the fact that Kraken can now very easily counter Inkjet because it can jump as high as Inkjet, which is a bit wild. So that's a little bit of Kraken counterplay. I like it. My favorite buff of this patch has to be the Ultra Stamp buff. This is wild. The area of which a player can be damaged from the shockwave of continuous stamp attacks is increased by roughly 43%, which basically just means if you're rampaging with the stamp, you have a higher chance of hitting people for that 40 damage, which is really good, because hitting 2 40 damage hits and then missing your third and leaving someone on 80 damage is really frustrating. That makes it more likely to get the kills while rampaging with Stamper. The turning performance is a lot better, so it just basically just faster turns, which is nice, because Stamp's handling is really mediocre at the moment. And when doing continuous attacks, when rampaging, the stamp will be translucent on the user's screen. This is huge, because stamp is a huge special. So it takes up a lot of space and it makes it hard to see where your opponents are. Stamp being translucent means you have a better idea of what's happening directly in front of you, which is, something you want to know when you're using a special that affects things directly in front of it. That is an honestly amazing buff. I cannot wait to use this. Wiper main here. That is amazing. Crab Tank introduced an interval where players cannot attack for 0.33 seconds after returning to attack mode from mobile mode. This is interesting. This is heavily nerfing the power of the ball form. One of my main complaints with Crab Tank was how easy it was if you could just hop out of ball form and immediately fire off an explosive shot at your feet. So you could defend yourself at close range very, very fast with the Crab Tank, which was something I thought it shouldn't be able to do, considering, you know, it's a tank. It's a long-range tank. It's supposed to be used from a distance. And increase the end like for the special, which is always a good way to add counterplay. I think these two Crab Tank nerfs will mean the special will see a lot less use, which I'm quite happy about, because despite the minor buffs in the past couple of patches, this thing is still way too strong. So this gives it a lot of options to be dealt with by other weapons now, which is nice. It's really nice. And then Kraken. Kraken did deserve some nerfs, I will not lie. That special was a little bit broken in certain modes. So what they've done is, in tower control, you can now be pushed back off the tower more easily. And in Clam Blitz, you can no longer carry your clams while using the special. These are huge, because previously, if you were using Kraken on tower control, you could just sit on the tower with Kraken, and people just wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And there were times when people could just win over time by getting a team of a couple Krakens and sitting on tower, and the opposing team would be able to do absolutely nothing. That special was broken. And in Clam Blitz, you could just waltz right up to the basket with Kraken, wait until the special ended, and then dump a clam in to get lead. That was also really broken. So this is definitely a well-deserved nerf. Kraken will still be really powerful. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be still a really popular special. But I'm glad to see that the devs saw the major issues with certain ranked modes and were willing to change it. That's good. Gear abilities. These are quite big, I will say. Sub resistance up. Basically, the chip subs have been... The amount of damage resistance to chip subs has been increased. So, Burst Bomb and Fizzy Bomb. Now, if you get hit by one of these while you have sub resistance up, you will take quite a bit less damage, which is really nice. This will reduce the viability of spamming of those subs, which I think was a major aim of this patch. And Opening Gambit got a buff, finally. If a player splats or assists in splatting an enemy while this gear ability is in effect, the effect will now be extended by roughly 15 seconds instead of 7.5 seconds. That is massive. Doubling the extra duration you get for a splat is huge. That means Opening Gambit is actually a viable alternative to Last Ditch Effort or any other headgear ability. Also, Intensify Action will also now occur while this ability is in effect. I have no idea what that means. I don't understand what that means, but it sounds like a buff. So, we'll take it. If someone could please explain what that's trying to say, then please do, because I have no idea. But either way, Opening Gambit now can actually last us quite a long duration. That's really good. Moving on to our points for special, Carbon Deco got a buff, which is, I didn't expect Carbon Deco of all weapons to get a buff, but alright. 200 to 190, so that Trizuka is going to become even more valuable. And the 96 Gal Deco, reasonably so, got a buff. Sorry, got a nerf from 200 to 210. I main this weapon, so that's pretty painful, but honestly I can see where they're coming from with this, and I don't blame them. And the final major change is the sound effects of our opponent's Kraken Royale are now easier to hear from a distance, which makes sense. The special was a little bit quiet. I mean, I never really saw this as a major issue. It was mainly the exploits on Tower Control and Clan Blitz that were the proper issue, but I'm glad they boosted the sounds a little bit. That's a nice change, even if it wasn't really something that people were focusing on. Salmon Run. Salmon Run got some major changes. The interval between touching a golden egg and being able to use it is now roughly the same for all players. This is massive. This is absolutely huge. They removed egg lag from Salmon Run. I need to see this happening in game before I believe it, but that's massive. Egg lag is a huge issue in Salmon Run. There's been so many instances where people have been unable to meet quota or unable to get a high score because eggs just won't pick up because they take too long to pick up. They finally fixed it. That's going to be massive. I'm assuming we're going to get even higher scores. I can't wait for that 400 egg round to be absolutely blown out of the water by some other crack Japanese team getting like 500, 600 eggs or something absurd. Honestly, I'm really excited to see where this goes. The unfortunate thing is, if the lag is really bad, the delay will return, which is unfortunate. I mean, what can you do? Splatoon's a laggy game. It doesn't have its own dedicated servers. Cry about it, I guess. Anyway, they state here what their focus for this update was. It was adding Splatfest data. The halftime report should feel a little bit less like the winning team has already been decided, which, to be honest, for like most halftime reports recently, they've been pretty set in stone, apart from, I think, was it Firewater Grass? I can't remember. Main weapons changes should highlight the unique traits of weapons and strengthen certain combinations of sub and special weapons, which, yes, they did. All of the weapons that got minor buffs will really appreciate them. And it'll definitely give them a little bit more use. Stuff like Snipe Raider and Zimmy definitely won't become meta, but you'll see them slightly more often. I haven't seen a Snipe Raider in ranked in weeks, maybe months at this point. So these are definitely well-deserved main weapon buffs. Sub-weapons, they've basically just said, we don't want you guys spamming Burst Bomb anymore, which is really nice because, I mean, Burst Bomb spam was a bit of an issue. It's basically a main weapon in itself, and I'm glad they've increased the amount of ink it takes. That means it's a lot less viable to just spam it. Special weapons. They've made adjustments to the performance of each special weapon now that the usage of special weapons new to Splatoon 3 is better established. Basically, what I think they're trying to say is, now that we've seen how well special weapons like Crab Tank perform, Triple Ink Strike, Inkjet, Ink Vac, Kraken, etc., now that we've seen how many people play them, what people's opinions are of them, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, the Splatoon devs can actually create, valuable patches and, make them a little bit more balanced, which is nice. This is good. This is what we want to see. For the new special weapon Kraken Royale, its basic abilities are unchanged, but it's been adjusted in certain modes to reduce unfavorable circumstances. As I was saying, exploiting Kraken's invincibility in Clan Blitz and tower control was definitely a major issue, and I'm glad they got rid of it. Still, it can be exploited in Rainmaker to get instant checkpoint clears, but that's not as massive an issue. It was mainly tower control in Clan Blitz, so I'm glad they fixed that. And for Salmon Run, the changes should ensure that the lag will be minimal no matter which system is the host. It's possible that the selection of the host system for wireless play in any or all game modes may change, either by adding a feature that improves communication efficiency. Therefore, we are taking steps to minimize lag, regardless of which system is the host. This is good. Host lag, it gives unfair advantages to the team with the host and makes Salmon Run a little bit more tedious. So getting rid of host lag is a welcome change, no matter what. And at the end here, they state that they're planning on releasing another update at the end of the current season, focusing on balance adjustments and adding features for the new season starting in June. This basically just confirms that we're not getting a new update until Sizzle season or whatever they're going to call it. Which, yeah, that's what we expected. So cool. This is the mid-season patch. It's a little bit earlier than usual, but that's fine. Moving on to bug fixes, I'm going to skim over these because there's quite a few and I don't want to go over all of them. But Brush got a bug fix. certain bomb types got a bug fix. Trajectory line when holding the R button got a bug fix. Apparently that wasn't particularly accurate. Auto bombs now don't clip through terrain as much anymore, which is nice because I've seen that happen a couple times. It's kind of funny. Crab Tank got a fix where users who held down the ZR button before changing from mobile mode to attack mode started rapid firing slightly faster than usual. Basically, what I think they messed up here was the timer from which you start rapid firing to where you are at your maximum fire rate starts as soon as you leave ball form, even if you haven't technically started firing yet, which is a nice change. Ink vac. If someone was moving forward while being attacked from behind, their shots would sometimes be blocked. This is basically just saying, if you've ever experienced trying to attack an ink vac and they've been immune despite you attacking the back or sides, that's been negated now. I don't know if it's been fully fixed, but it'll just make it easier to attack ink vac's weak spots, which is good, because that's like its only vulnerability. Tacticals no longer rebound as forcefully, and they don't bounce as far when they hit walls or other terrain. Fixing an issue that sometimes allowed players to jump farther than intended when jumping right after a charge attack with the Kraken Royale. I didn't know that was an issue, but I'm glad they fixed it. Fixing an issue that sometimes allowed players to jump farther than intended when doing a squid roll off the wall with Kraken Royale. Similar to the last one, Kraken just having a bit too much movement. Another good bug fix. Fix an issue that enabled players to do a squid surge or squid roll during the period when the player actions were supposed to be disabled after the effects of Kraken Royale wore off. Basically just fixing squid rolling and squid surging during end lag, which makes sense. And fix an issue where the animation that a player slapped an enemy with a direct hit from the Rainmaker didn't display. I didn't know that was an issue, but it's been fixed now. Moving on to multiplayer fixes. Fix an issue that caused players to not take blast damage from an inkjet shot if it looked like the shot landed on their screen, but not on the screen of the inkjet user. Basically, just inkjet desync has been fixed. That's pretty sick. And speaking of desync, stamp desync has been fixed with it looking like you've been hit on the opponent hit. You hadn't been hit by the opponent on your screen, but they actually had. Stamp's weird special. Either way, desync fix. In Scorched Gorge, in Clam Blitz, clams were not placed symmetrically at the start of the battle, which I think had already been pointed out, so that's nice. It just makes Clam Blitz a little bit more balanced on Scorched Board. They should call it Scorched Gorge. Scorched Gorge. Next, an issue in Hagglefish Market where some terrain unintentionally appeared translucent depending on the position of the player and the camera. I didn't know this was an issue, but it's been fixed now. That's interesting. Hammerhead Rainmaker, players were able to get into unintended narrow spaces. I have no idea what that is referring to, but that's an interesting fix. Mahi Mahi Resort in Clam Blitz, where clams were not placed symmetrically, similar to Scorched Gorge, just a balance fix to specifically Mahi clams. In Wahoo World, players would not be able to swim even if it looked like the areas that they were swimming in had already been inked. I didn't know that was an issue, but I'm glad that's been fixed. That's always frustrating. In Brine Water Tower Control, an issue has been fixed that sometimes caused players at the top of a slope to get caught between the tower and the terrain. That's probably referring to like the final climb at the end of the tower route. Which is a nice fix. Getting clipped into terrain is not fun. Adjusted part of the terrain in Flounder Heights to fix an issue that allowed players to use unintended methods to invade the enemy base with the Kraken Royale. I'm assuming that's referring to like Kraken climbing up uninkables, which could fix, if that is the case. Fix an issue when using the super jump in Flounder Heights that sometimes caused decoys to fall into trees and telephone poles. I don't know what it is about these fix that's so funny to me, but I'm glad they fixed it. Super jump viability is always a good fix. On Manta Maria, some certain sub weapons would get buried in the terrain when used on certain walls, so I'm glad they fixed that. Manta Maria is a favorite map of mine, so any bug fixes to that are much appreciated. And another Manta Maria fix. In Turf Wars, Splat Zones, and Clan Blitz, the pillar in the center of the stage had weird painting physics, so that's been fixed now. Moving on to Salmon Run fixes. Fixing the issue in Big Run that prevented players from receiving a badge according to their high score, even if they received the corresponding decoration. So now you get badges. People who didn't get their badges before will also be able to receive their badges as soon as they update the software, which I've heard quite a few mates of mine not being able to get their own Big Run badges, which is unfortunate. So now you'll be able to get those. Fixing the issue that made it lock the special ability activations didn't get replenished for an extra wave if the player had used up all their special abilities already and wearing the Gloop Suit series of work suits. I never thought that wearing a Gloop Suit would be detrimental, but apparently that was a thing. I'm glad they fixed that. Fixing the issue that sometimes caused player controls to stop working if the player was standing in certain areas while the wave was changing. That's a good fix. Being unable to move is very frustrating. Fixing the issue in the goalie seeking event where the state of the gushers would differ for each player, preventing them from damaging goalies. This was not something I was aware of, but that is certainly interesting. Any fix to desync is always appreciated. Talking about desync, another desync fix for Mothership prevented boxes from being carried by Chinooks from exploding, even if they were destroyed, and fix the desync issues when if a Chinook was defeated right before letting go of its box, whether or not the box remained would be different on certain player screens, which is good. I'm glad they fixed that. Because that caused a lot of confusion a couple times. Moving on to the just general other fixes. This is the last part of the patch note. Fixing an issue that made certain stickers hard to see against the background when a player got them. I didn't know that was an issue, but that's pretty good. I think that's referring to the white box, but nonetheless. Fixing an issue on the confirmation screen when joining friends in a group with a password that caused the group's voice chat to appear to be off even when it was set to on. No one uses voice chat in NSO. It's just abysmal, so cool fix, I guess. Fixed a rare issue where doing certain actions on the freshest fix page of the equipped screen would cause the game to crash. Didn't know that was an issue. Glad it's been fixed. Fixed an issue where if the player pressed the ZR button while in Hotlantis to change the product display, they then went to another shop before returning to Hotlantis, the product display would not revert to its original state. No idea what that's on about. But it's a shop fix, so it's not particularly important, but good fix nonetheless. Fixed an issue in the lobby that prevented players from being unable to send an alias after entering the password to join a private battle. That was frustrating, and I'm glad they fixed that, because I encountered that a few times. But yeah, that's the whole patch. Absolutely cracked, honestly. Like, really good patch. The buffs to these underpowered main weapons is really appreciated. All of these main weapons will definitely appreciate these buffs. And I really hope to see more play from things such as the Zimmy, the Snipe Writer, the Reflux, especially aggressive Reflux. Aggro Reflux is a really fun playstyle. This actually makes it kind of viable. And the changes to sub-weapons, Angle Shooter getting a buff, Burst Bomb getting a nerf, both of those are really good. Nerfing the best sub-weapon and buffing the worst sub-weapon are, you know, obviously the best changes to make. Special weapons, buffing mediocre ones, nerfing overpowered ones, all good changes. Crab Tank finally getting a nerf, Ultra Stamp finally getting a buff, Kraken being less exploitable, all good changes. Buffs to opening gambit and sub resistance, so the most underutilized abilities, that's really handy. Points of special, small increases and decreases for weapons that definitely deserve them. And of course, the major Salmon Run fix, removing egg lag, that's huge. I honestly cannot wait to play this update. It looks amazing. I hope you all agree with me on this. It's genuinely probably the best balanced patch we've seen for free so far. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching today. This is definitely very different from my usual content, but thank you for sticking around if you made it this far. If you want to see me react to these changes live on stream, then head over to my Twitch channel. It is twitch.tv/modmanta. Go check it out. Go have a look. But anyway, yeah. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated. And I will see you all later. Have a grand old day. Bye-bye.